Beyond the Gate spoilers tease that fans are about to witness the long-awaited reunion performance of the Articulates. On paper, this sounds like a dream come true, a nostalgic, glittering event that brings together Anita Dupree, Tracy Tyler, and Sharon Winger after years of silence, conflict, and painful memories. But things rarely go according to plan when unresolved tensions simmer just beneath the surface, and this reunion will be no exception. It starts as a triumphant return and ends as a chaos-ridden disaster. From the moment the reunion was announced, anticipation exploded across social media. Nostalgia-fueled excitement drove fans into a frenzy. Old clips of the trio went viral again, and hashtags like Articulates Reunion and Back in Harmony trended for weeks. The event was to be held at the historic Halbert Arena, where the group had first broken records in the early 2000s. Organizers spared no expense. Jim Price, a legendary event promoter portrayed by Alec Bay, came on board to ensure everything would go smoothly. But Price, for all his experience, underestimated the volatile chemistry of the group. Anita Dupree was the wild card from the beginning. She'd spent the last decade alternating between brief solo projects and chaotic social media outbursts. She never fully stepped out of the spotlight, and that hunger to be center stage again drove most of her decisions. Tracy Tyler, on the other hand, had found relative peace in Nashville, writing songs for newer artists and staying out of drama. Sharon Winger had gone the furthest from the industry, becoming a vocal coach and charity advocate, largely avoiding the limelight. Getting the three of them in one room was difficult enough. Getting them to rehearse together was another beast entirely. Rehearsals were sporadic and tense. Anita often showed up late or not at all, blaming artistic inspiration or last-minute tweaks to her costume. Tracy tried to keep the group grounded, sticking to the set list and pushing for professionalism. Sharon played peacemaker, but even she couldn't ignore the growing cracks. The setlist had been carefully curated, a mix of greatest hits and a few acoustic reinterpretations to show how they'd matured. But Anita wanted more. She proposed a surprise solo moment, a spoken-word performance in the middle of Southern Stars, their biggest hit. Tracy shut that down immediately. "We promised the fans the Articulates. Not some experimental poetry night," Tracy snapped during one meeting. Anita rolled her eyes. "And I promised myself I wouldn't become irrelevant. This is how we evolve." The friction mounted. Jim Price tried to mediate, suggesting they add a few more rehearsals, maybe even bring in a neutral choreographer to help smooth things out. Sharon agreed. Anita ghosted the next 3 meetings. By the time opening night came, everyone was exhausted, emotionally frayed, but determined to get through the show. The arena was packed. Fans wore throwback merch, screamed every time a teaser played on the Jumbotron. Backstage, nerves ran high. Sharon did breathing exercises. Tracy polished her guitar. Anita, already in a custom crimson catsuit dripping with rhinestones, faced, phone in hand, ignoring the anxious energy in the room. Jim Price hovered nearby, checking schedules, confirming cues. The first half of the show was electric. They opened with Midnight Radio, and the harmonies were tight. The choreography felt a little rusty but charming. Fans roared with approval. By the third song, the crowd was swaying, singing every word. Even Anita stayed on script, performing with a level of focus she hadn't shown in years. For a brief, shining moment, it felt like the Articulates were back. But halfway through the set, things started to unravel. During the bridge of Starlight Girl, Anita missed her cue. She paused, then launched into a dramatic ad-lib section that none of them had rehearsed. Sharon tried to keep up. Tracy stopped playing entirely, her eyes fixed on Anita with disbelief. The audience seemed confused, unsure whether this was part of the act. When the song ended, Anita smiled, arms raised, soaking in the applause. Tracy stepped forward. "What the hell was that?" Anita laughed, loud enough for the mic to pick it up. "A moment of truth. Something real." Sharon interjected quickly, trying to keep the show moving. "Thank you, everyone. Up next is a special acoustic rendition of..." "No," Anita cut in. Up next is The Phoenix. The Phoenix was a solo track Anita had released 2 years prior, a chaotic, spoken-word rant set to synth pads. It had never charted. Tracy's face darkened. "We are not doing that garbage." That was the spark. What followed was a live, unfiltered argument between the 3 women on stage. Their mics picked up everything. The audience, once euphoric, now sat in stunned silence. Some pulled out their phones. Sharon tried desperately to pull them back together. "Let's just finish the show, please. The fans deserve at least that." But Anita was already walking toward the front of the stage. "I'm tired of pretending. This isn't about nostalgia. This is about truth. About claiming space." The band behind them stopped playing entirely. Tracy walked off. Sharon followed after a moment, clearly fighting back tears. Alone under the spotlight, Anita started performing The Phoenix anyway. It was haunting, erratic, and painful to watch. Fans didn't know whether to clap or leave. Some did both. Backstage, Jim Price was livid. The production crew scrambled, trying to figure out if they should cut the feed. Sponsors were already calling. Tracy sat in her dressing room, fuming. Sharon stared at her reflection, wiping away mascara. Anita finally came off stage to silence. No one congratulated her. No one made eye contact. She walked past everyone and disappeared into the hallway. The headlines the next morning were brutal. Articulates implode live on stage. Anita Dupree hijacks reunion. Disaster in Halbert Arena. Social media was worse. Fans were split. Some defended Anita's outburst as brave. Others slammed her for destroying the show. Jim Price gave a tight-lipped interview, saying only that he deeply regrets the way the night unfolded. The damage was immediate. The rest of the tour dates were suspended indefinitely. Merchandise sales plummeted. Sponsors pulled out. But the real implosion was behind the scenes. Tracy refused to speak to Anita. Sharon tried to mediate, leaving voicemail after voicemail. Anita, meanwhile, went online, claiming she was silenced, that the show was a corporate sham, and that she had freed herself from a false narrative. But underneath all the noise, something darker began to take root. Rumors started swirling about what had really gone on during the planning phase. A leaked email showed that Anita had been threatening to quit unless she got a solo spotlight. Another leak revealed that Jim Price had considered cutting her entirely from the reunion. Sharon's name showed up in both conversations, caught in the middle. Fan forums lit up with speculation. Who betrayed who? Was the reunion doomed from the start? Soon, a new video began circulating. It was backstage footage, likely leaked by a disgruntled crew member. In it, Anita could be seen arguing with Jim Price. "You think you can control this? You think this story doesn't belong to me?" Her voice cracked, more desperate than angry. Jim replied coldly, "The story belongs to the fans. You're just a part of it." That line hit a nerve. It became a meme. It also revealed a deeper truth. This reunion was never about healing or nostalgia. It was about control. About 3 women trying to reclaim pieces of themselves that had been splintered, monetized, and manipulated. And in that battle, there could be no harmony. Weeks passed. The media frenzy died down. But the story was far from over. Tracy retreated from public view, refusing interviews. Sharon agreed to a sit-down with a major outlet, where she spoke candidly about the failure. "We loved each other once. I think we still do in some way. But that stage brought out every unhealed wound." Anita announced a solo documentary. She promised it would reveal the truth they don't want you to see. But as the dust settled, something unexpected happened. A letter surfaced, a handwritten note from Sharon to Anita, dated 2 weeks before the show. In it, Sharon begged Anita to stick to the plan, not because of contracts or fans, but because she believed they could still be magic together. The letter ended with, "I still believe in us. Please don't make me regret it." And, just like that, the narrative shifted again. Now, the question wasn't just what happened on that stage, but whether there was still a chance for redemption, or if the damage had gone too deep. The world had seen the explosion. But what came after would reveal the real story of power, betrayal, legacy, and whether fractured bonds can ever be made whole again. The fallout from that night wasn't just career-ending for some, it carved a deep canyon between the women at the heart of it all. Anita Dupree disappeared from the public eye after a final flurry of cryptic posts hinting at betrayal and a broken system. The promised documentary never aired. Her social media accounts went silent. Fans speculated she had checked herself into a retreat, a rehab, or had left the country altogether. The truth was harder to pin down. Jim Price, who had once championed her return, refused to speak on her whereabouts, only stating in a terse statement that Ms. Dupree has stepped away from entertainment indefinitely. In her absence, the narrative began to reshape. Tracy Tyler returned to Nashville, turning inward but not retreating. She began working with young, emerging musicians, many of whom had grown up idolizing her. The anger she held toward Anita didn't fade overnight. It curdled into something quieter, a sense of betrayal wrapped in disappointment. But in interviews, Tracy remained professional. Some things are too broken to fix. We gave it everything we could. Sharon Winger, still holding the middle ground, tried to rebuild something out of the ashes. She organized a benefit concert not as an Articulates event, but under her own name. Tracy declined the invitation. Jim Price didn't even respond. But Sharon pressed on. She performed stripped-down versions of their hits, reimagined with strings and piano, giving them new emotional depth. The press called it a quiet triumph. Sharon called it therapy. What no one expected was what happened next. A private email thread between Sharon and Tracy was leaked by an anonymous source. In it, Sharon proposed a new idea, not a reunion, but a reckoning. A one-night-only documentary/live recording hybrid that would tell the truth, unfiltered, about everything that led to the meltdown. It would be raw, unscripted, and painful. Sharon wrote, "I don't care about saving face. I care about being honest. If we don't own this, someone else will." Tracy's response was terse at first. No point reopening wounds that never healed. But after several back-and-forths, something shifted. Tracy agreed to a meeting. Jim Price wasn't invited. The industry didn't need to be involved this time. They met in a private cabin just outside Asheville. Cameras weren't rolling yet. It was just Sharon and Tracy, and years of tension thick in the room. They talked for hours. Not about the music, but about Anita. Neither knew exactly where she was. Rumors suggested she was somewhere in Morocco, painting under a new name. Others claimed she was working on a book. What mattered more was whether she would join them, not for redemption, but for clarity. Sharon tracked her down. Or at least she tried. Through a web of contacts and a few long-shot emails, she managed to get a reply. It wasn't from Anita directly, but from someone calling themselves her creative liaison. "Anita has moved beyond the Articulates," the message read. "She is pursuing a higher artistic truth. She does not wish to rehash the past." But then, a week later, a package arrived at Sharon's home. No return address. Inside, a USB drive and a handwritten note. "Use this if you want. Just don't twist it. I won't be a villain again." The drive contained hours of footage, home videos, studio arguments, candid moments from the rehearsal process, and one final monologue Anita had recorded days after the failed show. In it, she was raw, unfiltered. "Everyone wanted me to be something clean. Predictable. But I'm not. I never was. Maybe I messed up. Maybe I ruined everything. But maybe the truth is we were always headed for this crash. Because no one ever listened." That clip became the centerpiece of the documentary. Sharon and Tracy moved forward. They titled it Stage Left. The project wasn't sanitized or glamorized. It showed the early glory days, yes, but it also showed the unraveling. The compromises. The silences. The pressure. And, through it all, 3 women trying to carve identities outside of a brand that consumed them. When the documentary aired, the reaction was polarizing. Some viewers felt vindicated, seeing Anita's perspective reframed made her implosion feel almost inevitable. Others saw it as a redemption arc for Tracy and Sharon, who had long been painted as the stable ones. But what no one expected was the final scene. It wasn't announced. It wasn't promoted. A single, grainy clip. Handheld. Recorded by Sharon, judging by the voice behind the camera. The three of them, Anita, Tracy, Sharon, in a kitchen, years ago. Laughing. Cooking something ridiculous. Flour everywhere. Harmonizing badly to a 90s pop song playing on the radio. No dialogue. Just laughter. Then the screen faded to black. The documentary reignited interest in their story. Not in a commercial sense, they didn't announce a tour. There was no merchandise. But discussions erupted across podcasts, panels, university courses. The Articulates were no longer just a girl group. They had become a case study in fame, friendship, and fragmentation. Jim Price tried to capitalize. He pitched a fictionalized series inspired by the drama. Tracy sent him a cease and desist. Sharon publicly condemned the project. Anita posted a single comment under a viral tweet about it: "Parasites always need hosts." As for the women themselves, their paths remained separate. Sharon continued her solo performances, but always included a segment called Letters Unsent, where she read excerpts from journal entries she had written during the reunion process. Tracy released an EP called Static, filled with stripped-down, blues-heavy tracks that hinted at years of suppressed emotion. And Anita? She released a surprise album under the pseudonym Nova Red. No vocals. Just layered, distorted instrumental loops that built and collapsed over and over. The closing track was called Starlight Girl Redux. It ended in silence. A year after the documentary aired, Sharon received a postcard. No signature. No return address. Just a sentence. "Still believe in us." Whether it was from Anita, she never said. What matters more is that the wounds, while still raw, had become part of the story. Not erased. Not forgiven. But acknowledged. No encore. No reunion. Just the echo of harmonies that once were, and the quiet truth that not every song needs a final chorus to be complete. Months passed, and the conversation surrounding the Articulates began to quiet, but never fully disappeared. A cult following had taken root around the documentary and their fractured legacy. Fan-made edits, think pieces, and video essays flooded online spaces, picking apart every detail of their rise, fall, and unresolved ending. Stage Left had opened a door not just into the lives of three women, but into the anatomy of fame itself, what it gives, what it takes, and what it leaves behind. Then came the tribute. A major music festival in Austin announced a special performance, Songs of the Articulates, featuring a lineup of contemporary female artists influenced by the trio. Names like Cami Reese, Mira Bloom, and even indie darling Ren Novak signed on to reinterpret classic Articulate songs in their own styles. Tracy declined the invitation to appear. Sharon agreed, but only in the capacity of musical director. The night was electric. Artists took the stage one by one, offering stripped-back renditions, synth-pop reimaginings, even a jazz version of Dust to Moonlight. In the final act, a hologram of the Articulates' early performance from 2003 played on the big screen. The crowd erupted into cheers and tears. Backstage, Sharon lingered alone, standing beside the monitor as the past danced in front of her. A quiet figure approached from the shadows. Dressed in all black, her hair longer, a hood hiding part of her face. Sharon turned. Anita. No cameras. No announcements. Just a quiet nod between them. Sharon didn't ask where she'd been. Anita didn't explain. Instead, she handed Sharon a small hard drive. "New music," Anita said. "Not for release. Just for you." Sharon took it with both hands, as if it were something fragile. "You came." "I always do. Just late." They hugged. It wasn't dramatic or tearful. It was short. Real. Later that night, Sharon sat in her hotel room, headphones on, listening to the drive. It wasn't what she expected. It wasn't experimental, chaotic, or cryptic. It was simple. 3 songs. Acoustic. Her voice layered over traces of harmonies, and one track just one had Tracy's voice, pulled from an old studio take. She knew what it meant. Not a plea. Not a tease. But closure. Tracy never responded publicly. But in a radio interview months later, when asked if she'd ever consider recording with Anita again, she paused. I think some stories are meant to be chapters, not books. But I don't regret the pages we wrote. The Articulates would never reunite again. Not officially. But that wasn't the ending. The ending was quieter. It lived in the reinterpretations, in the fans who still sang their songs, in the acknowledgement that even broken things can echo beauty long after they've fallen apart. Years later, a plaque was unveiled at Halbert Arena commemorating the group's first sold-out show. It didn't mention the meltdown. Just the music. 3 names carved in silver. Anita Dupree. Tracy Tyler. Sharon Winger. Together, even if only for a moment, they had changed the sound of a generation. And sometimes, that moment is enough.